Professor Michael Griggs. For those of you who are familiar with two other books that he has written, know that he has a new book called Sleepwalking While Black. And Professor Griggs teaches a wonderful class at Wayne County Community College. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about this new book of yours called Sleepwalking While Black.
Well, it's something I put together to kind of shed light on some of the cultural things that manipulate
To
black
wake
people.
folks up. Huh?
That's right, that's right. So I give some information in here to show how collectively many of us are sleepwalking. And because of the way we have been manipulated, it serves as a barrier that hinders us from solving our problems and understanding our problems.
Talk about the book.
Well, sleepwalking is, it really, I think, pushes us to look at our reality and what's normal, if you will. For example, today is the school day. So what we will find is you will find millions of black children who will go to school, and throughout their educational life, these black children and black communities will learn all about white people. And I understand to us in our community, that is normal. To other communities, they would see that as insane, that no one puts other people before their mothers and fathers to solely study about them, let alone their mothers and fathers' adversary. And this is the beginning of sleepwalking. The fantasy of our children should study all about white people in hopes that they get a job from white people, and then they eventually live in a white community in hopes that their children go to school with white people. Something is wrong with that. And people who sleepwalk, they see that as normal, which in all respect, no other community, you will never find a community of Jews teaching their children all about Jamaicans. That would be insane. And you won't find a Cuban community studying all of their life about Arabs. No one put other folks before them. That is a sign of sleepwalking.
And that's connected to the shame of being a victim.
Yeah, and just the cultural manipulation. We have taught to put other folks first and foremost before us. That's why the tricky question that I often get when people ask me, what's wrong with these schools? That is a tricky question because, in essence, nothing is wrong with the schools. If you understand history, the history of the schools were designed for one child and one child only. That was the upper class white male child. That's how American educational system started off. So each class and all the curriculum were designed to meet his needs. So if he go into philosophy, he see upper class white males. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. If you go into sociology, he see upper class white males. Durkheim. If you go into psychology, he's going to see Freud, Jung. It was designed for that child to meet his needs. It wasn't designed for any other child. So therefore, in the last few centuries, the schools have been meeting the needs of that child. And most of us teachers, we have been trained to teach to a child that we rarely come in contact with. In hopes that if that child show up in the class, that he gets his. So when you look at education and you look at what's going on with education, nothing is wrong with these schools. We must change the foundation of the schools in order for it to work for other children. But we can't look at it and say, hey, what's going on with these schools? They're doing exactly what they were designed to do.
We have a bank of callers, but I was going to say that one of the things that occurs to me is that the European is not even qualified to decide what should or should not be included within the curriculum in terms of other cultures to begin with. Their knowledge base is solely around Eurocentric values,
That's right.
culture, tradition, etc. So they're not even qualified to say, well, let's include some of the things that happened in ancient Egypt. They were the first ones into smelting or something like that. And then it would be kind of insane probably on their part also to highlight the achievements of others, which would diminish whatever highlights they had. So we're sort of in a catch-22 in this situation where they're not qualified to be able to say what is, and then they're not open to suggestion. So how do we overcome that? Because since if I control all the books, the only thing I know is my history. How do I even begin to include Chinese, African, etc. history?
Right, you hit on something important, because when you have a narrative of white supremacy, saying that everything great in this world that ever happened has to be connected to white, that poses a serious barrier to getting at truth. Because in a nutshell, our education system kind of goes like this. The white man is the father of history. The white man is the father of mathematics. The white man is the father of psychology. He's the father of philosophy. He's the father of medicine. He's the father of astronomy. We're taught, and this is a sleepwalking process. This is normal to us to think that he is the father of every single discipline, which suggests at the same time that no one else have done anything. If you go to church, he is not only this Jesus Christ, who they describe as having feet like brass as if it was burnt in a fire, Moses, who was born in Africa. He is Jesus Christ. Let him tell it. The white man is Moses. He's all of the prophets. He's all of the stained glass windows. Not one angel could be a Mexican. You can't have a Chinese angel. It sends a message to folks. You had nothing to do with this. Everything great about this is all about him. So this narrative that is the norm, and black folks go to church, we go to schools, and this narrative of everything great is synonymous with whiteness is normal to us, but that gives rise to sleepwalking. Because if that is the norm, if you are invisible in education, if you are invisible in religion, then you go to your assigned position in life and you play out a role of invisibility, where you don't try to take this world by the horns, because you don't see yourself in these leadership positions. So you leave leadership to the man you've been shown has always been a leader doing everything.
Yes.
I guess we'll take a few callers now, but first I was going to ask you to let the audience know where they may be able to purchase or acquire your book.
This book will definitely inform you about you, what your role should be as a black male, which we should be providers and protectors of our children. And I think it would help to make you psychologically whole, which we desperately need to be.
And I would recommend that you register at Wayne County Community College and take the classes that Professor Griggs teaches.
Thinkers, many of which the masses don't listen to. But most mature people in this world connect their identity to geography and landmass, no different than the Chinese American, the Italian American, and the Arab American. It lets you know who you are first and foremost and where you're from. Because American can tell us where we live, but it doesn't tell us who you are, because there are many people who live in America. But the African American traces his roots back to Africa. The Arab American traces his roots back to where he's from in Chinese America. So it was something that our fathers wanted us to understand where we are and where we're from.
And then we have
names.
ancestors.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
right.
How you're viewing us, please.
Good morning, fellow patriots.
Good morning, Les. How are you?
I'm just fine.
Thanks for
Professor
calling.
Griggs, good
Good
to
morning.
see you, Tabidi. You too.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks.
You know, that's a very interesting, subject matter. Because, I don't know if I'm just an average guy or not, because I view life a little differently, I guess, than any other. Because, I guess I was interested in what came on TV. I thought TV was the greatest entertainment and also educational tool that America has brought to us until the internet came along. I used to grow up watching, shows like Julia, Room 222, Mission Impossible, when I seen this black guy who was a genius at what he did.
Yeah, I Spy.
I Spy with Bill Cosby,
Yeah.
who went around the world and
Right.
spoke several languages, and he was also intellectual, too. So I view black people differently. And then my mother brought in the Jet magazine, where I learned about black people, not the Detroit News, and I delivered the Detroit News. I used to read it, but it wasn't anything too much about us in there. But I did read Jet and Ebony magazine. So when you say, when you're walking,
Sleepwalking.
through life and picking up life lessons, what lessons are we getting, and what lessons are we trying to get when we walking through life? Because I the question, it kind of is interesting to me, because if you see yourself as a black person, you would want to learn about who you are while you're here on planet Earth. Okay,
one would think so.
you would think so, but it seems like what the professor is talking about is not happening.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct, Les.
Go ahead, respond.
Like I have this one section to kind of illustrate where we are that I call the hive mind. There was this Egyptian proverb that says that the shortest road to wisdom is nature. That even if you get confused about what your role is on this planet, God put his wisdom in nature, right? So as we sit here, the ant community right now is sending out the males, and the males are going to go out. And they're going to gather resources, spend all day long gathering resources to take it back to their hive, to their colony. The bee is going to do the same things, and bees are going to go out, scavenging this earth, looking for resources to take it back to their hive. The Arabs are getting dressed right now. They're leaving their homes by the thousands to go out to get resources, to bring it back to their community. The Mexicans, the Jews, the whites. It's a predictable behavior that all of God's creations operate off the hive mind. The African American who has been sleepwalking, socially engineered to be the benefit of another people, he is getting dressed also. We're going out in these communities, we're going to get resources, and we're going to take 95% of all our resources, and we're going to give them to the white community. It's the only one of God's creations, from the ant to the lion, to the bee, to the Arab, to the Jew, who has been manipulated and sleepwalking to such an extent that it's operating outside the laws of nature. All of nature look at its community and its offspring as a primary purpose for what it does every day, except the African American. Out of all of God's creations, this is to the extent that we are sleepwalking, where we have been made to be beneficial for other people and not to ourselves. One of your callers who just called, and he spoke about how, his universal thing, and how, regardless of pigment, right? How do you get someone to think about a universal plan and meeting that needs without meeting the needs of their very own children? Our children are dying in the greatest numbers. They're being incarcerated in the greatest numbers. They're dropping out of school in the greatest numbers. They're getting the worst grades. How do I have the luxury to begin thinking about meeting the needs of other people when the people I see in front of me who look like me, my nephews and nieces, are suffering so? You must be sleepwalking. No other species, human, insect, or animal, put others before themselves.
One point I want before I leave.
Yeah.
What is the time frame you have in your research?
How long did it take me to?
No, I'm talking about the period, because I grew up. I was born in 1953. Okay.
Oh, okay. I know what you're saying.
I'm trying to figure out where the breakdown, because the people that I grew up in, the era that I grew up, because when I went to Cooley High School, we fought for African American studies. We protested, for bringing that to our school.
Well, the sleepwalking process has started when slavery started, but I think it has accelerated after integration, where now black children have been the byproduct of a white experiment. And many people, according to Malcolm X, Carter G. Woodson, a lot of folks sat and they wondered, and they were worried and concerned about if you turn black children over to white people during the 60s, the people who were bombing our churches, the people who were spraying water holes on you, who sick dogs on the breasts of black women. And some of us made the conscious decision, I want our children to be educated by them, for they can shape and mold their minds. And they did. And prior to my generation, you guys had doors that was left unlocked. You can sleep out on the porch when it was hot, didn't have to worry about anybody messing with you. There were no home invasions. But some folks made the decision that it would be better if we were educated by our adversaries and have their mindset instead of the mindset of the ones who gave birth to us.
One thing I'd like to add quickly.
Thanks,
First,
Les.
I have on a shirt with Malcolm X. I just want to say happy belated birthday to Malcolm X. His birthday was yesterday. And I want to add that to discussion in saying that what Les was referring to and what you were saying, Professor Griggs, when Malcolm spoke, he spoke about our economic, political, and social philosophy should be black nationalism. And it's not that we are diminishing the accomplishments of whatever other racial group, but to have that homogeneity within our
term that we need to understand, oppression. Now, we often throw that term around. You know, we talk about oppression, but most of us, I don't believe, really understand how oppression works. So if I can, I just want to share this with you. When you oppress a people, by definition, you disturb their thinking process. You make them, to a great extent, incoherent. You make them confused. You manipulate them. Oppression is saying, it says that, okay, human beings are the most sophisticated technology this world has ever seen. And when I oppress you, the politically grounded person that you're supposed to be, oppression says, no, I'm not going to let you mature and develop to where you ought to be politically. The father that you're supposed to be, the strong protector and provider, oppression comes in and says, no, you're not going to be that type of man. The knowledge that you're supposed to have about this world, about your history, oppression comes in and undermines that. Said, no, you're going to know the history that I teach you. The positive self-concept, the psychologists say, we should have about ourselves, the positive self-image. Oppression comes in and says, no, I'm going to make you hate the very hair at the top of your head, down to the soles of your feet, and everything in between. So oppression, what oppression does, is stop human beings from fully developing into the full-blown human being they're supposed to be. It undermines your development and tries to keep you elementary as it relates to politics, keep you elementary as it relates to education, keep you like a boy instead of this full-grown man that you're supposed to be. So it's just not a term. I know we've been using it, but we need to understand, so it disturbs our thinking. So most of us haven't developed into these full-blown political, deep critical thinkers that we're supposed to be. Because in this place, the first thing was, you will not be educated. So your thought process early on the plantations for 400 years was disturbed. As you tried to grow like you're supposed to, because you're a human being, folks undermine your development. So politically, we became elementary. Historically, we became misguided. Spiritually, they want to undermine that, our connection with God, being able to see God in yourself. All of the natural things that come with being a fully mature human being, oppression undermines that. To the extent where are we in 2014? We're struggling doing what ants and bees can do, just raising productive children, to be sharp, to be critical thinkers, to read and to write and to know math, all the things that humans are supposed to be able to do. But when you are oppressed, remember, it disturbs your thinking process. It undermines you from reaching your full potential. And that's what we've been engaged in for years.
Oh, yeah.
We have a caller, but I just want to bring up, when you bring up the point of oppression, and then I think of the word press within that word, and then I think of the word, extending that to the word pressure. Oppression does create a certain amount of pressure. Now, one of the things I'm concerned with is why are we complicit in this thought of inferiority complex? Because we are complicit to a degree.
We are.
Now, you yourself, Theo, myself, and many of our viewers, we have, let's say, elevated beyond that because we understand our more true substance as opposed to the images that have been given to us. But let's just say the majority of us who are collectively sleepwalking while black, why are they more complicit with their own inferiority and accepting of that as well?
Well, once you've been conditioned to sleepwalk, you kind of just, what we've been taught by a lot of our parents, unbeknownst to them, you kind of go along to get along, and you just go along with the status quo. Most of us haven't thought that we have these schools, and schools are designed to meet our needs, but they're not meeting our needs. And we understand if we have broken families, what classes do we have to teach us how to put our families back together? If we have high unemployment rate in our community, which we do, what classes do we teach? How do we solve that? If we have an HIV rate where black women are 6% of the population, but over 70% of all new cases of AIDS, what classes are we taught? What education to meet our needs? So some of us, like you mentioned, Thabiti, we're conscious, and that's the opposite of sleepwalking, because to be conscious is to be awake to these things. So we venture off the path to get the information that will solve our needs, you see, because the education that we're currently engaged in is not meeting our needs. We don't have classes dealing with the problems that afflict us, and that's why our problems keep getting worse and worse and worse.
Absolutely.
Hello, caller. You're on the air. Would you share your name and how you're viewing us, please?
Yes, this is Tyrone. I think this is 33.
Okay.
You know, when we talk about other nationalities in the country of America, no nationality was forced from a continent of a lot of tribes that don't get along today. No other people in this country was forced to this country and was breeded like animals, where the woman was taken advantage of by the other nationalities, even to the day with the immigrants taking advantage of black women because of economic conditions. No people experienced that. So that also was reflected in our psychological makeup. That's different from any other people. That's why the blues came about. Don't want the ice man coming around when I'm gone. So no other people, even the Africans, did not suffer that type of history. So it seems to me we were separated geographically. We made our living in an industrial country, not an agrarian country. We then started having psychological makeups because of those common experiences different from any other people, and that's the culture of black people in America. So when we try to artificially dig up and go back to Africa, we then deny our role in the world that we seemingly to be the future of mankind with modern technology breaking down nation states.
Okay,
And
let's
when-
let the professor
so
respond to that.
Do we go back to Africa with tom-toms and beating drums to communicate, or use the internet and the phone? So therefore, I want to know what I regard myself, and I want your guest to tell me, I regard myself as American black man who of African and other descent, and that is the future of mankind. As people of all over the world communicate, it won't be no nationalities, won't be no nation states. So how do you, what do a person like me looking forward, or should I continue to look backwards to try to capture something that I can't, because that's history?
Okay, thank you so much for that. Now listen off the air. Go ahead.
Well, it's, the current studies tell us today, right, that people are becoming less and less interested in the fantasy of this, the whole global world kind of shucking off its past, and we're just moving towards a future without tradition. To remove or attempt to remove the legacy and the tradition of Muhammad, Arabs would die before they allow that to happen. You cannot erase their mothers and fathers, nor are they interested in moving out the 42-mile road, living in an environment where their mothers and fathers' name will never be mentioned. The Chinese, they're becoming more protectionist, which this is coming from the White House and everybody else. Most people are clinging more and more to their tradition because they see it as a source of strength that's helping them, you see. So they're less interested in losing that legacy that has worked for them. The other day on Sunday, when you're watching television, 247 CNN, you'll often hear every Sunday the white man refer to his tradition about his founding fathers and what they wanted. Each son is supposed to represent the interests and the agenda of his father. This is not only a cultural thing, but it's a religious thing. It's something that Jesus reminded us through scriptures. I'm not here for me, but I'm here to do what my father told me to do. And the Arab is here to do what his father wanted him to do. And I am here to do what my fathers wanted us to do. But we find ourselves in a place where, since we're disconnected from our father's ideas, we're all over the place. instead of latching on to the ones who loved us the most, our mothers and fathers, and fulfilling out their agenda, no different than the connection between the Chinese and Confucius, and the Arab and Muhammad, and the white man and his father. Everyone is father focused. Whether it's from this shores, you can go back to Shakespeare with the white man. You see, you can go back to the Middle East with Muhammad. It doesn't matter where you live. You have an origin and you have an agenda from your fathers who came way before you. So we find ourselves in places where other groups aren't. Again, we're living outside the laws of nature. If I can give this example, I often challenge my students. I said, think about this from an African perspective. Look at the universe and how it's designed. I say, right now, you have the spider who is showing his babies how to do for himself. It's showing his babies how to spin a web so it can catch food and feed itself. And the bee is showing the baby bee. You're going to see this summer, and you see it every summer, showing the baby bee how to extract from the flower what it needs to feed itself. At the same time, the Mexican father, he's out showing his father how to do landscaping and do brickwork and masonry work. The Korean is in the beauty supply stores showing his children what kind of wave cats we like, the Diane brushes, Marcel, how to run that business. The Arab is teaching his son how to type in $10 on pump 5, how to sell those things. And I ask my students, I say, what are you here for? Because our mothers and fathers taught us, go to school and hope that a white man will have a job waiting for us. The only one of God's creations that has their offsprings totally dependent on another group for their future. This is sleepwalking. And this is why we're always the most unemployed people in America. Because we think it's someone else's job to provide for our own children. Then we complain about why they're unemployed. Well, all of the rest of God's creations are creating employment for their own offsprings. We look towards another group, the group that told us we're here to work for them, to help their dreams come true. And we forgot that our fathers had dreams of our own.
Those things, so we were supposed to control the economics, the politics, and the social structures in our community, which we've failed to do. And I guess, as you were saying, and Les alluded to, the fact that there's been a breakdown where during the generation that Les spoke about, we had those insights to have the college campuses, everything included. And of course, white supremacy is an exclusive, not an inclusive type of philosophy to begin with.
It is. And to that point, let's say for our community, I don't think any community should do this, but I'm only speaking for my own. A couple of years ago, we were outraged that Ariel Castro, remember, he kidnapped some young girls and he held them hostage and he terrorized them and he raped them for years. And when the community found out about it and the news brought it out, we were outraged at that. Well, those are a lot of our founding fathers who we teach our children to look up to. And think about how dangerous that is for political white correctness, that we would try to excuse folks who kidnap people, who terrorize them, rape them their entire lives, toes cut off, castrated, and we lift these people up on high. We put them on Mount Rushmore. We put them on our dollar bills, and we teach millions of children, black, whites, and everyone in between, to look up to these people, these violent people. And as an educator, I'm saying, shouldn't we have a standard? Can we just say, no rapists, no kidnappers allowed to be revered and looked up to? If it's wrong for Ariel Castro and we demonize him, how do at the same time in classrooms we uplift the same people who did the same thing?